I'm Noelle Whitaker, and last week I stood in a courtroom and watched my parents and sister plead guilty to financial fraud. But the moment this story truly began was 2 months earlier when I pulled into my parents' driveway and saw a red sports car gleaming like fresh blood under the afternoon sun. My sister Tessa was twirling barefoot around it like she'd just won a reality show. Maybe she had. With my money. She squealed again, running her fingers along the hood like it was a lover returned from war. Her phone was out, already snapping selfies. From inside the house, I saw my mother and father standing by the window, champagne glasses in hand. Dad's Hawaiian shirt was half unbuttoned, Mom's curls were done like she'd come from a salon, and both of them looked like they were watching their favorite show unfold in real time. I stepped out of my car, still in my work clothes, my blouse wrinkled from a 12-hour shift at the firm. The moment my heels hit the driveway, I felt the tension pull tight behind my eyes. My phone buzzed in my bag, probably another notification from my bank. I didn't check. I already knew what it would say. Tessa saw me and squealed louder. "Isn't she gorgeous, Noelle? Look at this baby." The salesman practically gave it to me. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat felt dry. I watched her hop over to me, her hair bouncing in perfectly styled waves that matched Mom's to a T. "Wait," I said, forcing the words out. "Where did you get the money for this?" Tessa rolled her eyes and gestured dramatically toward the house. "Don't start with the lecture. Mom and Dad helped me figure it out." "Right, guys." From behind the glass, my parents waved like proud sponsors of a school fundraiser. Mom stepped outside, smile fixed and eyes a little too bright. "Your sister needed reliable transportation, honey. We just used that family emergency account you set up, remember?" The driveway tilted under my feet. That account wasn't for emergencies. It was my down payment. $70,000 I had saved over the past 8 years. Every bonus. Every tax return. Every skipped vacation. I stared at her. Without asking me, it was for the family, sweetheart. "We thought you'd understand." "Understand," I repeated. My voice came out thin. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out, opened my banking app, and there it was in black and white. My balance, $167.31. Dad came out next, grinning like he'd just closed a deal. "Now, Noelle, your sister has a couple of interviews lined up. First impressions matter. You know how it is." "Interviews," I said. "For what? The 3 jobs she quit this year, or the degree she never finished?" Tessa's face crumpled, instantly tears springing to her eyes like she had a faucet hidden behind them. "That's not fair, Noelle." Mom stepped between us, arms wide like she was defusing a bomb. "Sweetheart, she's been struggling. You know that. She just needs support right now. You've always been the strong one. The strong one. The dependable one. The one who stayed late to balance their checkbooks in high school. The one who paid the bills when Dad's early retirement plan backfired. The one who got Tessa through junior year math while Mom had her weekly migraines. I am the strong one," I said softly. I looked directly at my mother. "And I'm also the one whose name is on all the financial accounts." Dad's grin faltered. I tapped the screen on my phone and walked a few steps away. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. "Hi, yes, this is Noelle Whitaker. I need to close account number 548,173 effective immediately." "Yes, I understand this will affect any linked accounts. That's what I want." Mom lunged forward. "Noelle, stop. You can't do this." "Actually, I can." Tessa's mascara had already started to smear. "You're just jealous because Mom and Dad love me more, and you're bitter and boring and alone." I turned to her. "You know what's funny about karma, Tessa? It doesn't always wait around. Sometimes it shows up the second you deserve it." She blinked, confused. "What is that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. I just got into my car, turned the key, and let the engine rumble to life. In my rearview mirror, Dad was already pulling out his phone. Mom had both hands on her head, and Tessa was screaming something I couldn't hear. It looked just like the family portrait they kept above the fireplace. Dad on one side, Mom on the other, Tessa in the middle with a bright smile. That portrait had cost over $400. I paid for it. Just like I paid for the phone bill, the groceries, the credit card minimums, but not anymore. 2 blocks down, I pulled over and rested my forehead against the steering wheel. My hands were still trembling. I could have cried, but I didn't. Instead, I picked up my phone again and dialed a different number. "Bryce, it's me. Remember when you said I should stop enabling them?" he answered on the second ring. "Yeah, well, I just did something kind of extreme." There was a pause, then his voice softened. "You want to grab a drink and tell me all about it?" I glanced at my rearview again. Tessa's new car still gleamed in the driveway like a prize. "Yeah," I said. "Bring your laptop. We're going to need it." We met at the same bar we always did, a little place tucked behind a bookstore in Northwest Portland where the lights were low and the drinks were strong. Bryce was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth with his laptop open and 2 gin and tonic sweating on the table. He didn't say anything when I slid into the seat across from him. He just pushed one of the glasses toward me and raised his eyebrows. "You okay?" he asked. "Not even close." He gave a short nod like he understood that was all I had in me. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the ice clinking in our glasses. Then he started typing. "Start from the beginning. Everything." I took a sip and stared down at the scratched wood of the table. It was sticky familiar. So much of my life felt like that lately. Familiar, repetitive, expected. I had been the one who always did the right thing, the safe thing, the responsible thing. I paid my taxes early. I scheduled oil changes to the mile. I showed up for people no matter what. "I think it started when I was 12, I said finally. That was the first time Mom had one of her headaches and couldn't get Tessa to school. I made her lunch, braided her hair, got her dressed and to class on time. I remember feeling proud, like I'd done something good. And then it never stopped." Bryce didn't interrupt. He just kept typing. In high school, it was helping Dad figure out the family budget after he lost that second job. Mom was too stressed to deal with numbers and Dad couldn't tell a debit from a credit. I learned how to balance a checkbook before I could legally drive. College, I paid for myself. Loans, scholarships, part-time jobs. I got accepted to a solid MBA program in Chicago. But then Tessa got that invitation to study ballet in Paris and the tuition was insane. Mom said she couldn't let her miss the opportunity of a lifetime. They asked if I could wait a year on grad school. Just 1 year. I never went. Bryce stopped typing, his fingers hovering over the keys. "That was when you started at the firm, right?" "Yeah. Full-time. Took a second job on weekends for a while too. Dad had racked up a bunch of credit card debt, and they needed help making minimum payments. Tessa was still abroad doing God knows what." Bryce leaned back and let out a low whistle. "I wasn't bitter," I said quickly. "Not back then. It felt like it mattered. Like I was keeping the family afloat, that's what they called me. The glue, the backbone, the strong one. But I think what they really meant was the cushion. The safety net. Until you needed one." "Exactly." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my banking app again. Still the same, $167. 8 years of saving gone in a blink. "It's like they don't even see it as mine," I muttered. "Like, it's just another account they can dip into when Tessa gets bored or Dad forgets to pay a bill." "You said your name's on their accounts, yeah?" "I set it up years ago when Dad had surgery and couldn't manage his finances. It was supposed to be temporary. But they kept adding me to things. Joint accounts, emergency funds. I even let them use my credit score to co-sign a loan once. Or so I thought." Bryce's face darkened. "That's the kind of stuff people go to jail for." "Yeah, well, family." He raised an eyebrow. I sighed. "I know. It's not an excuse, but when it's happening one tiny ask at a time, it doesn't feel like theft, it feels like duty." "That's how they get you," Bryce said, pulling up a spreadsheet. 1 teaspoon of guilt at a time. We worked in quiet for a while. He started pulling bank statements, linking old records from the accounts I still had access to. I watched rows of transactions populate across the screen, tiny numbers that felt like they carried the weight of my entire 20s. $20 here, 40 there, always under 100, just small enough to be forgettable. But they were frequent. Weekly, bi-weekly. Always to the same routing numbers. I leaned in. Wait. That one. That's the joint savings I opened for them after the refinance in 2019. Bryce clicked the line. Then clicked again. Holy hell, he muttered. They've been siphoning from your individual account to that one. Automatic transfers. Labeled as family support in the memo. They must have set that up with online access. I never authorized that. That's fraud, Noelle. I stared at the numbers. My stomach rolled. I felt like I was watching my own life bleeding out in tiny, polite withdrawals. You want to know the worst part, I said, voice flat. They probably don't even think they did anything wrong. To them, I'm the success story. The one who's doing well. The one who has enough to spare. Bryce looked at me. Then why does it feel like you're the one always getting drained? I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my purse and pulled out an old bank folder. One I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside were papers I'd almost forgotten I had. Copies of a co-signed loan for a home equity line. Back then, Mom had promised it would be short-term just to fix the roof. Bryce took one look and his eyes narrowed. You know your name's listed as the primary on this, right? What number? I was a guarantor, not primary. He flipped the page and pointed. Noelle Whitaker. Primary applicant. My hands went cold. They forged it. Let's find out how deep this goes, he said. He opened a new file and started creating a timeline. I took another sip of my drink. It tasted like lemon and regret. Outside, the sky had gone from gray to black. Inside, the light from his laptop glowed against the glass, casting shadows across our booth like ghosts of the past. I wasn't sure how much more I could handle. But I was going to find out. The next morning, Bryce came over to my apartment with 2 coffees and a look on his face that made my stomach twist before he even said a word. You're going to want to sit down for this, he said, opening his laptop as we both settled at my kitchen table. The screen lit up with rows of numbers. Bank statements, dates, merchant codes. Bryce had pulled everything he could from the joint account's old credit cards and that ancient checking account I'd opened in college and completely forgotten about. See this one? He pointed to a line highlighted in yellow. It's from your college savings account. Transfers of $35 every week for almost 6 years. Always on Thursdays. Always to the same destination. That's not possible. I haven't touched that account in forever. They did. He clicked again. The money was going to a card in my dad's name. And not just one card. 3 different credit cards, all under different banks, all connected by the same address. My childhood home. My parents had used me like a secret ATM. That's not even the worst of it, Bryce said, scrolling down. There were electric bills. Insurance payments. Even a gym membership in Tessa's name that had been debiting from my account since 2020. My hands started to shake. My coffee sat untouched. They've been pulling money from me for years. Quietly. In pieces. Like carving away a statue one chip at a time until you're just dust. He nodded slowly. I ran a quick total. Between all the accounts, it's just under 140 grand. Not including whatever interest they've racked up using your credit score. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. $140,000. That was my house. My security, my 20s. Bryce looked at me carefully. Do you want to stop number? I want to know everything. That's when Eliza called. You're not going to believe what I just found, she said as soon as I picked up. I was going through some title records for fun because apparently I don't sleep anymore, and guess whose name is listed as a primary on the refinance of your parents' house last year? I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Eliza didn't wait. You. It's your name. Not as cosigner, not as backup. Primary borrower. I felt the blood drain from my face. They told me the house was paid off. That they'd cleared the mortgage early. Well, they lied, Eliza said flatly. It's a refinance loan. $250,000. And guess what? They used your name, your credit, and forged your signature. Bryce swore under his breath. Can you send us the documents already in your inbox? I hung up without saying goodbye. I couldn't form the words. I opened my laptop and stared at the PDF Eliza had forwarded. Page after page of legal documents. My name, my signature. But not mine. I didn't sign any of this, I whispered. They forged legal loan paperwork. That's a felony, Bryce said, sitting beside me. This isn't just a family dispute anymore. This is financial abuse. Identity theft. I didn't even know what to say. My brain felt numb. Like I'd been walking through my life, blind, trusting people who never deserved it. Bryce pulled his chair closer. We need to secure everything. Lock your credit. Close every account. Pull full credit reports from all 3 bureaus. This is systemic. I nodded. He started typing furiously. While he did, I walked into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like someone who hadn't slept. Someone who had aged 5 years overnight. For years I thought I was the lucky one. The successful sister. The dependable daughter. But I wasn't lucky. I was convenient. Quiet. Easy to manipulate. I was the golden goose they kept fed just enough to keep laying. I walked back into the kitchen. Start printing everything I told Bryce. Every transfer. Every forged document. Every linked account. I'm taking all of this to the police. He looked up. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He clicked print. The whirring of the machine was the only sound in the apartment for several minutes. Page after page slid into the tray, each one a piece of a puzzle I never asked to solve. Eliza texted next. I think I just found your signature on a home improvement loan too. You didn't authorize work on their house last spring, right? I typed back. Number. Keep digging. My phone buzzed again, this time from Tessa. Hey, can we talk? I think you're overreacting. I didn't answer. Bryce looked at me. You know this could destroy them, right? Good. He didn't say anything else. We kept working until the sun went down and the coffee went cold. The dining table was covered in documents, rows of printed evidence spreadsheets, email chains, a battlefield of paper. This isn't about a car anymore, I said quietly. This isn't even about the money. Then what is it about? It's about knowing they saw me as a resource, not a daughter. And I'm done being used. I picked up the folder with the forged refinance papers and flipped to the page with my fake signature. Let's see how they like being treated like liabilities. I was sorting the evidence into folders when my phone rang. Garrett's name lit up the screen and something in my chest tightened. He never called outside of work hours unless something was wrong. Hey Garrett, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Noelle, I need you to come into the office. Tonight. Tonight. Yes, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. It's about your sister. My stomach dropped. 20 minutes later, I was in his corner office on the 22nd floor of our building downtown. The blinds were still open to the city lights, but the tone in the room was anything but bright. Garrett stood behind his desk with a thick file in his hands, his mouth a firm line. He handed me the file without a word. Inside were printouts of a job application. Tessa's name filled the top, but my name appeared again and again in the references and verification sections. There was a copy of her fabricated resume. She listed herself as a financial analyst with 3 years of experience at Whitaker and Company, our firm. Claimed she worked directly under me. Even stated she had a master's degree in finance from Columbia. The email address listed for verification was fake, but close enough to mine that someone might not notice right away. This came to me through back channels, Garrett said quietly. The hiring manager at Kelson Capital used to work here. He flagged it immediately. I stared at the page in disbelief. I could practically hear her voice in my head bragging about her dream job and how she finally landed something serious. Except she hadn't landed anything. She was trying to steal it. None of this is real, I said. She dropped out of college after her first year. She's never worked in finance. She's never worked longer than 3 months anywhere. Garrett nodded. That's what I figured. But she's using your name. And she's using our company. I need to know if this is isolated or if she's done it elsewhere. And Noelle, I need to know you're protected. Your credibility is everything in this business. I felt sick. I thought the forged refinance documents were the worst of it. But this felt more personal. More public. She wasn't just draining my money now, she was trying to become me. She's been using my name for everything, I said slowly. loans, utility accounts, credit cards. Apparently now job applications too. Do you have proof? I pulled out my folder and opened it on his desk. Loan statements, transaction logs, the forged refinance, a printed screenshot of Tessa's application with my fake signature at the bottom. Garrett looked through the pages, his expression growing darker. "This is bad," he said. "Really bad. You need to take this to the police." "I already planned to. I've just been organizing the evidence." He picked up his phone and dialed a number from memory. "Detective Rivera, please. It's Garrett Dunham from Whitaker and Company. Tell her it's urgent." He handed the phone to me when she picked up. Detective Rivera's voice was sharp and steady. "Miss Whitaker, I've heard of your firm. What can I help you with?" I took a breath and explained everything. From the drained accounts to the forged refinance to the fraudulent job application. Her tone didn't change, but I could tell she was writing everything down. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "Yes, bank records, loan paperwork, screenshots, printouts. I can bring everything." "Good. This is more common than people think. Family financial fraud is hard to prove, but if you have the paper trail, we can move forward. This isn't just fraud, it's identity theft. They've been using my name for years." "I believe you. Can you come to the precinct tomorrow morning?" "Yes. Bring everything. We'll get started on the reports and contact the district attorney's office." "Thank you," I said softly. After I hung up, Garrett watched me for a long moment. "You sure you want to go through with this? I'm done letting them ruin me quietly." He nodded once. "If you need time off, say the word. We'll support you however we can." I left his office into the quiet of the empty hallway, the city lights flickering through the tall windows. My reflection stared back at me in the glass. I barely recognized her. Back at my apartment, Bryce and Eliza were still combing through digital records. When I told them about Tessa's job application, Eliza swore loud enough to make my neighbor bang on the wall. "She tried to steal your career too," she shouted. "This girl has no shame." I sat down at the kitchen table and looked at the mountain of papers. I wasn't sure where it would all lead. But I knew one thing. They had crossed a line. And I wasn't backing down. The next morning my phone exploded before I even got out of bed. Notifications lit up my screen one after another, buzzing until I finally grabbed it off the nightstand. Tessa had posted a long emotional message on Facebook. The kind full of vague platitudes and not-so-subtle accusations. She wrote about betrayal. About how some people forget where they came from. About how family should come before finances. She never used my name, but everyone knew who she was talking about. The comments rolled in like wildfire. "You deserve better, girl. Noelle always seemed so stuck up. Some people don't know how to love properly." It was surreal. Reading strangers dissecting my life like it was a reality television show. My hands shook as I scrolled. I hadn't even had my coffee yet, and already the world was judging me. Or at least their corner of it. Bryce walked in from the kitchen holding a mug and a half-eaten granola bar. He took one look at me and said, "What now?" I held up my phone. "Tessa decided to go public." He snatched the phone and scanned the screen. "Wow. That's some Olympic-level manipulation. She's playing the victim card hard. It wasn't just her. My mother had texted me 12 times during the night. Most were tearful apologies followed by guilt trips. 'We raised you better than this. Your sister is devastated. We didn't mean to hurt you. Please don't destroy the family.' Then came the email from my father. It wasn't emotional. It was legal. 'You had no right to close those accounts without discussion. We'll be contacting representation.' And sure enough, an hour later, I received a formal letter from Marla Jensen, a retired attorney and longtime friend of my mom's. The letter was thinly veiled as concern, but the message was clear. "Dear Noelle, I write this with a heavy heart as someone who has known your family for many years. I urge you to consider the implications of your actions and whether they reflect the compassionate, thoughtful woman I know you to be. Sometimes legal misunderstandings arise from emotional tension. I am confident that with patience this can be resolved amicably. Please do not escalate this further. Warm regards, Marla Jensen. I stared at the email and let out a bitter laugh. The nerve. They were turning it around like I was the one who overreacted. Like I was ruining the family's reputation instead of revealing the rot already there. They didn't stop there. My cousin Brett, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, shared Tessa's post with his own caption. "It's always the quiet ones who betray you. Shame on Noel." Bryce snorted when I read it out loud. "He's still mad you didn't loan him money for his weed business." Eliza arrived just in time to hear that. "What's the latest on the circus?" she asked, dropping her tote bag on my kitchen chair. "They brought in backup," I said. "Cousins. Lawyers. Social media." She pulled out her phone and opened her camera roll. "Then let me show you what I got." She played the video she'd taken the night before. Tessa's red sports car being loaded onto a tow truck. Tessa screaming in disbelief. My mother pacing in her bathrobe. My father trying to wave paperwork at the driver. It was absurd, and it was perfect. "We're sending this to Rivera," Eliza said. "I've already emailed the footage. This isn't just financial abuse, it's coordinated. They're trying to silence you while manipulating everyone else." I nodded. She was right. This wasn't just about me and my parents anymore. This was a full-blown machine. One that relied on old favors, loyalty, and guilt to keep itself running. Detective Rivera responded to the email within the hour. "Thank you. This corroborates the timeline and the pressure tactics. We've added it to the case file." That word hit me hard. Case file. My family had become a legal file number. Evidence folders. Investigations. Statements. I sat on the couch and let myself feel it for the first time. Not the anger, not the betrayal, the grief. Not for what they'd done, but for who I'd thought they were. The doorbell rang and for a second I froze. Eliza looked through the peephole. "It's just a delivery. You expecting something?" I walked over and opened it. It was a single envelope. No return address. Hand delivered. I opened it slowly. Inside was a typed letter with my name at the top. "We can still fix this. All of it. Just call us. We'll explain everything. But if you continue with this, we'll have no choice but to take legal action." No signature. Just the implication. Bryce took it from my hand and photographed it. More intimidation. Good. Let them keep adding to the pile. I exhaled slowly and looked around my apartment, the folders on the table. The video file playing on Eliza's phone. The letter in Bryce's hands. They wanted me to feel alone, but I wasn't. I was just getting started. Bryce sat across from me with his laptop open, eyes flicking between browser tabs and folders. He had barely spoken for the last 15 minutes, completely absorbed in whatever he was chasing down through the maze of financial records and archived files. Then he stopped and leaned back. "Noel," he said quietly, "you need to see this." I stood behind him and stared at the document he'd pulled up. It was a scanned newspaper clipping from the early 80s, blurry but legible. The article mentioned a local woman filing a restraining order against her father after years of financial manipulation. Her name was Lorraine Keller. My mother's maiden name. I blinked. That can't be right. Bryce clicked on another file. It was an old court record, sealed but partially available through public archives. Lorraine had testified that her father kept all her wages under his name, forbade her from having her own bank account, and used her credit to secure personal loans. She had to drop out of college because he maxed out a credit line in her name. My jaw clenched. I knew she hadn't had an easy start, but she never talked about this. Not once. Growing up, she made it sound like everything fell apart because of bad luck or poor health. Not control, not abuse. "She's repeating it," I said slowly. "She's doing the exact same thing to me." Bryce didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I sat down on the floor beside the couch, knees pulled to my chest. My mother had lived through this. And instead of breaking the cycle, she'd become the very thing she swore she'd escaped. I thought about every time she brushed off my questions about finances, every time she told me Tessa was just struggling, every time she said I was the strong one. It wasn't strength she saw. It was usefulness. My fingers trembled as I picked up my phone. For the first time in days, I considered stopping. Maybe this wasn't worth it. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was going too far. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Noelle came the familiar voice. Karen Myers. My old mentor. My first real boss. A woman who had taught me everything about strategic thinking and quiet power. Karen, I breathed. How did you know I've been following? Garrett told me what's happening, and I saw the posts. I thought you might need a reminder of who you are. I closed my eyes, the sound of her voice grounding me like it always had. I don't know if I can keep doing this. Yes, you can. You've always been the one to carry everyone else. It's time you carry yourself. It's just so much. They keep calling, texting, making me feel like I'm the one destroying the family. That's not love, Noelle. That's manipulation. And love that comes with conditions is not love at all. I felt something crack inside me. Like a window finally opening in a room I didn't know I'd sealed shut. You told me once, Karen continued, that power isn't about control. It's about truth, so tell the truth. Loudly. I wiped my eyes with the sleeve of my hoodie. Thank you, I said. You already know what to do, just finish it. When I hung up, I stood up and walked straight to my dining table. The folders were still there, neatly labeled. Account statements. Loan paperwork. Screenshots. Audio files of voicemails. Emails from their lawyer friends. The refinance documents with the forged signature. I gathered it all into a single expandable folder. Then I added a new page. A personal statement. Just the facts. Clear, concise, firm. My name is Noelle Whitaker. I am 30 years old. My identity has been used without consent by members of my immediate family to secure loans, credit, and assets totaling over $300,000 over the last 8 years. I printed the page and clipped it to the front of the file. Bryce handed me a flash drive. Every file scanned and backed up. I made 3 copies. I nodded. Let's send it. We scanned the documents again and emailed everything to Detective Rivera, including a formal request for prosecution. Then I uploaded a backup to the cloud and put the flash drives in separate drawers. 10 minutes later, Rivera replied. Received. We will begin processing formal charges immediately. Thank you for your bravery in coming forward. I leaned against the counter, my chest rising and falling. Not with panic this time. With clarity. They had taken my money, my credit, my future, but not my voice. That was mine. And I had finally used it. I went to bed that night, not out of exhaustion, but out of clarity. For the first time in years, I had drawn a hard line, and I didn't wake up with regret. I woke up with resolve. At 8:03 a.m., Rivera called. Her voice was businesslike, almost calm, but I caught the undertone of something more serious. The freeze orders are in place, she said. Everything linked to your name, every line of credit or loan obtained fraudulently, is now locked. Nothing moves without a court order. I stood at my window staring down at the street below. It was so quiet. A breeze moved through the maples. The stillness contrasted so violently with the bomb she had just dropped. So what happens now? We've notified all involved parties. Your parents and sister have been served official notice. The DA's office is fast-tracking your case. There will be a preliminary hearing in about 2 weeks. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. Every single word. Rivera hung up. No drama, no hand-holding, just business, just justice. 30 minutes later, Eliza burst into my apartment, laptop in hand, hair still wet from the shower. You're going to want to see this. I followed her to the couch. She opened a private browser tab and clicked on a post from one of our local online community pages. The headline read, Local Socialite's Car Repossessed Amid Financial Fraud Allegations. The video thumbnail was unmistakable. Tessa, in her designer sweatsuit, screaming at the repo man in front of my parents' house. I hadn't even realized Eliza had uploaded it. I didn't ask her to. But I was glad she did. The comments were brutal. So much for being a self-made influencer. This is what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. One even said that sister deserves a medal. It was like a tide had turned. For years, they'd painted me as the cold one, the boring one, the girl who chose spreadsheets over sisterhood. Now people were seeing the other side. The side I had lived with in silence. Bryce arrived next carrying bagels and an iced latte with my name written in thick black marker. Good morning to the woman whose enemies are now publicly eating themselves. I cracked a smile. Not because of the latte, but because it felt true. My phone dinged. New email. It was from my bank. A transaction attempt had been blocked on a card linked to my name. The account was under review. Attached was a copy of the flagged attempt to withdrawal of $500 from my parents' joint savings. The card had been frozen due to fraudulent association. I forwarded it to Rivera. 5 minutes later, she replied, confirmed. That account was tied to your social security number. They're going to feel this. Eliza handed me a manila folder. Also, this just came from the county recorder's office. I pulled records on the condo refinance. Look. I flipped through the forms. And there it was. My name. Forged in blue ink. I knew I hadn't signed that document. I wasn't even in town the week it was filed. We're adding this to your evidence file, she said. This isn't just unethical, it's criminal. More notifications buzzed across my screen. Tessa's original post, where she'd accused me of being unstable and jealous, had been removed for violating platform guidelines. Dozens of users had flagged it as harassment. And then something unexpected happened. An old classmate from high school, Jennifer Kingsley, messaged me. Hey Noelle, I saw what's going on. Just wanted to say I always looked up to you. You were the only one in AP Calc who didn't make fun of me. If you ever need a quiet place to vent, I'm around. I didn't cry. But I stared at that message for a long time. Because it was the first time someone offered me kindness without needing something in return. That afternoon, I returned to work. Garrett passed me in the hallway and gave a quick nod. No pity, no awkwardness. Just respect. By 4:00 p.m., I had completed my fraud report for a new corporate client. It felt poetic. I was tracking misuse of assets and manipulation of internal systems while my own family spiraled from doing the same thing to me. At 5:30 p.m., I walked back into my apartment. The light was golden and warm. Bryce had cleaned the kitchen and was chopping vegetables like it was just any weeknight. Dinner's in 10, he said without looking up. No chaos, no drama, just normalcy. Something I hadn't known I needed so badly. Later that night, I pulled out the folder I had organized with Rivera. Timelines. Statements. Voicemails. Bank documents. Social media captures. I reviewed each page like a lawyer preparing for trial. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was restoration. Restoration of credit, of dignity, of boundaries. At 11:42 p.m., a new email arrived from the district attorney's office. Subject notice of hearing and witness coordination. I opened it reading every word. The date was set. The location confirmed. A formal request for my appearance as lead witness and victim. I closed the email and shut the laptop. 2 weeks. 2 more weeks until I stood in front of everything they had tried to bury. And this time I wouldn't flinch. The voicemail came in at 6:12 a.m. while I was brushing my teeth. I wouldn't have checked it at all if the number hadn't looked unfamiliar, but something about the area code made my stomach turn. I pressed play. Noelle, it's me, your mother. Please don't hang up. I had to call from the county jail line. They only allow 5 minutes. Your father is not well. The stress is too much. They say he might need to be moved to the medical unit. And Tessa, she's barely holding it together. She could go to prison. Noelle, your sister. Please, I'm asking one last time. Write a letter to the judge. Ask for leniency. Say it was all a misunderstanding. We're still your family. The line clicked off before I could even react. I sat at the edge of the tub in silence, toothbrush and hand foam still in my mouth. I spit, rinsed, and stared at my reflection. It wasn't the pleading that got to me. It was how familiar it all sounded. The guilt. The pressure. The reshaping of truth. Say it was a misunderstanding. That morning I didn't return the call. I forwarded the voicemail to Rivera's office. Then I went about my day. 3 days later, I was called to appear at a pretrial debt verification hearing, a mandatory step before the DA could fully proceed with the fraud charges tied to the mortgage refinance. I expected to sit behind a table, speak with lawyers, maybe confirm documents. What I didn't expect was to be sitting in the same courtroom as my parents. They looked small under the harsh courtroom lighting. My father's suit no longer fit his frame the way it used to. My mother wore a beige cardigan, the same one I'd bought her 3 Christmases ago. They didn't see me at first. I sat near the back while the clerk called names. When the bailiff called mine, I stood and walked to the front of the room. That's when she saw me. Her face crumpled. "Noelle," her voice cracked, "please tell them you gave us permission. Tell them it was all just a mistake. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were desperate." The judge banged the gavel once. "This is not the time for testimony from the defendants. Miss Whitaker, please approach." I walked calmly to the stand and swore in. The DA's office asked only 3 questions. Were you aware your name was used to co-sign the refinance number? Did you provide verbal or written permission for your name to be added to the mortgage number? Are you willing to testify that your signature was forged on the documents submitted? Yes. My mother sobbed audibly behind me. My father bowed his head. "Thank you, Miss Whitaker. That's all." I stepped down and walked back to my seat. The hearing ended 15 minutes later. As I gathered my bag, I saw them watching me. Waiting, hoping. Outside the courthouse, the autumn wind whipped around my coat. "Miss Whitaker," I heard my name. I turned. It was my father. Flanked by a court-appointed handler, he had managed to catch up to me as I exited. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I never thought it would go this far. I thought we could fix it before anyone noticed. I didn't mean for you to lose the house. Or your job. You didn't mean for you to lose control," I said. He blinked. "You didn't mean for me to stop covering for everyone. We're your parents," he whispered. "And I was your daughter." I paused. If I forgive you now, I'd be teaching myself that love means never having boundaries. And I'm not teaching myself that anymore. He reached out, barely touching my sleeve. "Where are we supposed to go when this is over?" I looked him in the eyes. "Where was I supposed to go when you stole the roof I was trying to build for myself?" He didn't answer. Just turned and walked slowly back to the courthouse steps. That night, Eliza brought over 2 pints of Rocky Road, and Bryce queued up our favorite bad movie marathon. I hadn't told them everything about the hearing. I didn't need to. But when Eliza asked how I felt, I answered honestly. Lighter. Because there was nothing more to explain. No more games. No more last-minute pleas. I had spoken the truth under oath. And the truth didn't ask for forgiveness. It asked for peace. And I was finally learning how to claim it. Of all the court dates on my calendar, this one was circled in red, not physically but in my mind. The final sentencing hearing. The moment where years of betrayal would finally receive a legal name. Fraud, identity theft, financial abuse. The courtroom was colder than I remembered. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere. No whispers, no murmurs, no shifting in the benches. Just heavy silence as the bailiff called the case. The State of Oregon versus Lorraine Whitaker, Martin Whitaker, and Tessa Whitaker. I sat behind the prosecution's table, flanked by Rivera and a legal assistant I barely knew. I didn't look at the defense table. I didn't need to. I already knew what they looked like when they were scared. Lorraine's hair was tied in a neat bun. Martin wore the same navy blazer from the preliminary hearing. Tessa sat between them, visibly shaking. Her mascara had already started to smear and the hearing hadn't even begun. When the judge entered, everyone stood. Then we sat again as if pulled by invisible strings. The judge opened a folder and adjusted his glasses. "It appears the defendants have requested a change of plea." Lorraine's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my clients wish to change their plea to guilty on all counts." Tessa turned to her lawyer, whispering frantically, but the woman shook her head. It was done. The judge looked over the glasses again. Is that correct, Miss Whitaker? Tessa's voice was barely audible. Yes. And Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker Martin nodded once. Lorraine stared down at the table and whispered, "Yes, Your Honor." Then we will proceed to sentencing. But first we'll hear the victim impact statement. That was my cue. I stood my 3-page statement in trembling hands. I walked to the front and stepped behind the podium. The judge gave me a small nod. When I was 10, I used my birthday money to buy groceries because my mom said the fridge was empty. When I was 14, I tutored my sister before school every morning so she wouldn't fall behind while my mom recovered from one of her migraines. At 17, I gave up my scholarship to Stanford because we couldn't afford both my tuition and my sister's dance program in Lyon. My voice held steady. At 22, I opened a joint account with my mom because she said it would help manage emergency funds. At 26, I was covering my father's credit card minimums while saving for my own house. At 28, I found out that house fund had been emptied to buy my sister a car. Not by accident, but by design. I glanced at the defense table. Lorraine's eyes were closed. Tessa was crying openly. Martin wouldn't look up. The cost wasn't just money, it was time, trust, sanity. I stopped believing that love and loyalty were different things. I started confusing being needed with being loved. I paused to swallow the lump in my throat. They didn't ask me, they took. Over and over again. And every time I protested, I was told I was selfish, cold, ungrateful. I wasn't. I was surviving. A few people in the gallery shifted. I didn't care. I wasn't here to perform, I was here to tell the truth. They forged my name. They drained my accounts. They left me with debt I didn't incur. They made me question my own memory. And when I finally stood up, they weaponized family ties to guilt me into silence. I looked directly at the judge. But I'm not silent anymore. I stepped back, returned to my seat. The judge took a long breath and began reading from the sentencing paperwork. Given the nature and duration of the offenses, the financial harm inflicted, and the lack of prior criminal record, this court sentences Lorraine and Martin Whitaker to 5 years in state prison with eligibility for parole after 3. Full financial restitution is ordered, totaling $176,000 to be paid to the victim, Noelle Whitaker. A gasp echoed across the room. Tessa Whitaker is sentenced to 3 years in state prison with parole eligibility after 18 months. Restitution to be paid jointly with the co-defendants. Tessa sobbed into her hands. Lorraine slumped in her chair. Martin stared forward, unmoving. The judge's gavel fell once. Court is adjourned. I stood calmly, collecting my folder and coat. Tessa's voice broke through the silence like glass shattering on tile. You killed this family. I turned slowly, met her red-rimmed eyes. You did that all by yourself. She lunged a step forward, but her lawyer caught her by the wrist. You're not a sister, she spat. You're a monster. I looked back at the judge. Thank you, Your Honor, for calling their actions what they are. He nodded. Security escorted the defendants out. As they passed, Lorraine tried to meet my eyes one last time. I didn't give her that. In the hallway, Rivera touched my elbow gently. You did well in there. It doesn't feel good, I said honestly. But it's just. The words hung in the air. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. Underneath the bright white lights of Garrett's office, the contract on the table looked almost too good to be real. A keynote speaking opportunity at the Pacific Northwest Financial Wellness Conference. Travel honorarium and full promotional support. But what made my chest tighten was the line at the top: featured speaker Noelle Whitaker. Garrett leaned back in his chair. You don't have to say yes, but we think your story could help a lot of people. I nodded, running my fingers along the edge of the folder. People like me. Victims who thought it was just bad luck. Who kept giving until there was nothing left. Who didn't even realize they were being exploited because it came in the name of love. I'll do it. Garrett smiled. Thought you might, and congrats, by the way. For a moment, I wasn't sure what he meant until I turned and saw Eliza standing in the doorway, grinning like a woman who just delivered a miracle. Tell her, she said, holding out a key. The house. The one with the bay window and the climbing roses and the soft yellow light in the kitchen. The offer went through. It's yours. My mouth dropped open. Are you serious? She nodded. The seller accepted this morning. I just finalized everything. The house is officially under your name. No strings. No cosigners. No fake signatures. Just you. I took the key in my palm, felt its weight settle into my skin like it had always belonged there. I went home that night. My new home. The air smelled like fresh paint and hardwood. Eliza had left a bottle of champagne on the counter with a note in her looping script. To new beginnings. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just walked from room to room, bare feet against the cool floor, hands brushing the door frames, touching the walls like they might disappear if I blinked. This wasn't some borrowed space. It wasn't a gift I would be expected to repay 100-fold. This was mine. In the bedroom, I set the box labeled Essentials on the floor and pulled out the curtains Eliza helped me choose. I hung them slowly, carefully, the way you would drape something sacred. Then I sat on the window seat and looked out over the street. Quiet. Peaceful. No drama, no screaming, no one pounding on the door, demanding to be rescued from consequences. My phone buzzed. A message from Bryce. Cleared all the remaining linked accounts. Every credit card, every login, every auto payment. You're free. For real this time. I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "Thank you. I wouldn't have made it here without you." He replied instantly. "That's what friends are for. And hey, dinner at your place this weekend. I'm bringing cake. You're bringing that killer lasagna." I smiled. Deal. I opened the windows, let the breeze roll in. It smelled faintly of honeysuckle and something new. Something clean. There were no echoes in the hallways, yet no pictures on the walls, no clutter of a life fully lived. But it felt like a beginning. And for the first time, it was on my terms. I lit a candle and set it on the mantel. Its soft flame flickered against the white walls and cast dancing shadows onto the ceiling. A symbol maybe of everything that couldn't be taken from me anymore. They had stolen money, trust, credit scores, and years of effort. But they hadn't destroyed my will. They hadn't broken the part of me that still believed I deserved better. And now I had it. I curled up on the couch that arrived earlier that day, wrapped in the soft green throw Eliza had gifted me last Christmas. No voices yelling from the other room. No guilt nagging me from across the hall. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional chirp of crickets outside. This was freedom. Not loud, not flashy. Just simple and quiet and utterly mine. There was no trace of them here. No evidence of forged documents or frozen bank accounts or whispered accusations. No unpaid bills, no expectation of rescue. No letters in the mail with someone else's debt hidden inside, just a single set of keys on the table. Mine. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. Tomorrow I would prepare my talk for the conference. I would begin the next chapter of my career, one built on truth and clarity and boundaries that could no longer be crossed. But tonight I would let myself rest. No alarms, no obligations, only peace. Under the soft glow of my kitchen lights, I poured a cup of chamomile tea and let the quiet settle around me. The walls of my new home didn't echo with old arguments or carry the weight of unspoken guilt. They simply held space, warm and neutral, waiting to be filled with whatever future I chose to build. I took a seat by the window, looking out at the yard I'd just planted. The hydrangeas were starting to bloom, and the neighbor's golden retriever was making his usual lazy rounds across their fence line. It was a picture of stillness, but my phone buzzed against the tabletop, dragging in the outside world once again. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something about the area code made my stomach twist. I answered anyway. "Noelle," my mother's voice was thin, almost breathless. "It's me. Please don't hang up." I didn't say anything. I just waited. I need to ask something. Your father isn't doing well. His blood pressure's been all over the place, and with the stress and his medications." Her voice cracked. "When I'm released, there's nowhere for us to go. We lost the house, you know that." "Tessa." "Well, she's not in any position to help. I thought maybe we could stay with you, just until we figure something out." I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and opened them again. The tea had gone cold. Number. There was a pause. I'm your mother. And you're the same mother who signed my name to fraudulent loans, I said quietly. Who drained my savings, forged my signature, told me to be strong while you let my sister lie, cheat, and fail upward without consequence. We didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. Repeatedly. You did it when I was 14 and you told me I couldn't take a summer job because someone had to babysit Tessa. You did it when I was 23 and you said I couldn't afford graduate school because your retirement plan fell apart and I had to help with the mortgage. You did it every time you asked me to clean up a mess with a smile. Her voice got sharper. I said I'm sorry. You said a lot of things, I replied. But you only said them once the consequences showed up in handcuffs. She started crying. Real or not, I wasn't moved. I'd seen too many tears weaponized over the years. I can't do this with you anymore. I have to protect what's left of me. She tried again. You're all we have left. And you made that choice. You chose to use me instead of love me. I hung up before she could say anything else and blocked the number again. Rivera called 2 hours later. Tessa had violated her conditional release. Missed 3 check-ins, attempted to use a flagged credit card at a downtown boutique, and screamed at the officer who showed up at her apartment. She'd been rearrested and was being transferred to the state facility the next morning. She's not even trying to play the long game, Rivera said. This isn't remorse, it's arrogance. I didn't respond right away. You okay? Yes, I said, and I was. The next morning a letter arrived. Not an email but a real letter with my name written in looping script across the envelope. I knew the handwriting immediately. My mother's. Again. She wrote about her regrets. About how family is meant to forgive. She said her childhood had been cold, her own parents cruel and frugal, and that she thought she was breaking the cycle by giving Tessa everything she hadn't had. She wrote that she thought I would always be there. That she counted on it. There was a postscript. Please consider giving us a place to stay when we're out. We have no one else. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the fireplace. The match caught easily, curling the paper into smoke and ash. Outside the air was crisp again. I watched the flames through the glass for a long time, then stepped out onto the porch. The world continued like it always had. Mailboxes stood in their lines. The garbage truck made its weekly crawl down the block. Someone was mowing a lawn. On Facebook, my cousin had posted a new update. So sad when people forget what it means to stick by family. When did we stop giving grace to each other? There were comments underneath. All of them vague, all of them pointed. But none of them knew the truth. None of them had scraped out their savings to keep the lights on at a house they didn't live in. None of them had handed over opportunity after opportunity in the name of keeping the peace. I didn't comment. I didn't feel the need to defend myself anymore. That afternoon, Eliza stopped by with fresh bagels and a housewarming gift, a cozy gray throw blanket and a tiny jade plant. She dropped onto my couch with a groan. Heard from them again, yeah, letter and a call. Both asking for a place to stay. Eliza scoffed. You didn't respond right, I burned the letter. Good, because you're not their safety net anymore. Number, I'm not. And I'm not anyone's scapegoat either. We sat in silence for a while, sipping tea, watching light flicker across the hardwood floors. You know, she said, you don't owe anyone your peace. I nodded. I know. That night I turned off my phone, drew the curtains, and curled under the new blanket with a book I hadn't had time to read in years. I read until the words blurred, until my breath slowed, until the stillness inside me finally matched the stillness around me. Not because I'd won, but because I'd stopped playing a game that was never fair to begin with. Not because they were gone, but because I was done letting them live rent-free in my head and heart. I had nothing left to prove. Not to them. Not to anyone. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn love that should have been unconditional. I was giving it to myself. The conference center buzzed with low conversation and the rustling of pamphlets as people filed into their seats. Rows of folding chairs lined the room, faces turning toward the stage as the lights dimmed slightly. I stood behind the podium, heart steady, hands loose by my sides. No note cards, no teleprompter. Just me and the truth. When the moderator introduced me as a financial analyst and survivor of familial financial abuse, the room grew quiet. Not awkward, not hostile. Just still. I stepped forward and let the silence settle. My name is Noelle Whitaker. I used to think being the strong one in my family meant always saying yes. That love was proven through sacrifice. That being quiet, being dependable, being useful was the same thing as being valued. I paused, letting the weight of that land. For over a decade, I paid my family's bills, co-signed loans I didn't use, watched my savings vanish so others could live recklessly. And I did it all believing I was helping. That I was the glue holding everyone together. Until the glue cracked. Until they forged my signature. Emptied my accounts. Tried to become me on paper because who I was made their lives easier. I wasn't bitter. I was exhausted. I shared every step. From discovering the missing money, to filing charges, to testifying in court while my parents and sister looked on. I told them how silence had protected the abusers, not the victims. How people in power often use the word family like a shield. How saying no doesn't make you cruel, it makes you free. I told them that my revenge didn't come with shouting or screaming. It came in the form of boundaries. Legal action. A quiet home filled with things no one else could touch. When I finished, no one clapped right away. They just looked at me, wide-eyed, many blinking back tears. Then one woman stood and clapped once firmly. Then another, and another. Soon the room filled with applause. Not the kind reserved for celebrities or polished speakers. It was the kind you gave someone who had said the thing you were never allowed to say. Afterward, people came up to me quietly. A man in his 60s told me his brother had drained their parents' estate while pretending to care for them. A woman whispered that she'd co-signed for her daughter 3 times and lost her home. Another said she always thought something was wrong but never had the words for it until now. "You gave me permission to stop," one woman said, holding my hand. "You gave yourself permission," I replied. That night, back at home, I kicked off my shoes, tossed my blazer on the couch, and made a cup of hot chocolate like I used to as a kid, except now it was mine. My kitchen. My mug. My peace. An email pinged in my inbox. Subject: restitution disbursement notification. It was from Rivera. "Noelle, just a quick update. The court has issued the first restitution payment. $20,000 has been transferred to your account. More to follow in the coming months." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Not because of the number, but because of what it represented. Not charity, not pity. Accountability. I texted Eliza and Bryce in our group thread. First payment came in. 10 seconds later, Eliza wrote back. "So, party." Bryce added, "Tell me you're making that lemon cake." I smiled, typed back. "Not a party for the money. A party for freedom." They both replied with a string of exclamation marks and bad cake puns. I stood by the window again, watching the porch lights flicker on down the street. It was quiet outside. The kind of quiet that feels earned. And I thought maybe this is what real revenge looks like. Not screaming. Not breaking things. Just peace. Just a life rebuilt. Just knowing they can never take from you again. Because you no longer give them the chance. If you've ever been used because of your kindness, if you've ever been told that family excuses everything, you are not alone, and you don't owe anyone your silence. Share your story, speak your truth. And if you want to hear more tales of justice, of karma that finally caught up, of people like you taking their power back, don't forget to like and subscribe. You're stronger than they ever gave you credit for. And you get to write your own ending.